tadinya biru.
Lindungi sang buah hati agar sehat senantiasa. Wahai perempuan Indonesia, tercipta sebagai ibu bangsa, melahirkan insan yang mulia, sehat dalam jiwa dan raga. Kami terdepan dalam tugas untuk melayani kesehatan Anda, melindungi sang buah hati agar sehat senantiasa selamanya. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita melayani sepenuh hati untuk ibu dan anak negeri. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita sehatkan Indonesia. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita melayani sepenuh hati untuk ibu dan anak negeri. Rumah sakit harapan kita, pusat kesehatan anak dan bunda. Wahai perempuan Indonesia, tercipta sebagai ibu bangsa, melahirkan insan yang mulia, sehat dalam jiwa dan raga. Kami terdepan dalam tugas untuk melayani kesehatan Anda, melindungi sang buah hati agar sehat senantiasa selamanya. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita melayani sepenuh hati untuk ibu dan anak negeri. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita sehatkan Indonesia. Rumah sakit anak dan bunda, harapan kita melayani.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kedengaran? Kedengaran. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Coba. Kedengaran? Bisa lagi. Coba.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore semuanya. Good afternoon everyone. Introduce myself. I'm Nanda Marata Fitria. I'm a nurse in Women and Children Hospital RSAD Harapan Kita yang saat ini berdinas di ruang Gambir dan ruang Catlin. Sebelumnya saya mengucapkan Happy Independence Day, Selamat Hari Kemerdekaan Republik Indonesia. I would like to say thank you for all speakers, moderator, and all participants who already attend in this afternoon. Today we will have guest lecture with our speakers, Professor Hideaki Ueda. He is the Vice President, Director of Cardiology in Kanagawa Children Medical Center, Japan. Now he is already with us today. And then next. Before that, please make sure that you turn off your sound and video during the session. Pastikan untuk videonya di mute. Yang kedua, please make sure that you fill in the attendance form. Nanti juga saya akan membagikan untuk link kehadiran. And if you have any question, please type your question on the chat room. Jika ada pertanyaan, bisa chat di link atau bisa mengangkat tangan. Next. Okay, I will let our moderator, Dr. Suprohaita, to open our guest lecture. Dr. Suprohaita is fellowship trainee divisi cardiology and in FKUI, menyelesaikan pediatric cardiac intensive care and congenital interventional cardiology di Institut Jantung Negara. Dan berikut adalah working experience dari Dr. Suprohaita. Kepada Dr. Suprohaita, saya persilahkan.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih Nanda yang sudah memperkenalkan saya. Hari ini alhamdulillah kita kedatangan tamu istimewa dari Jepang, adalah Profesor Hideaki Ueda sebagai Vice Director atau Wakil Direktur dari Rumah Sakit Kanagawa Hospital, Kanagawa Children Medical Center di Jepang, di Yokohama. Jadi kita kedatangan beliau karena kita memang mengundang beliau untuk melakukan proctorship sekaligus webinar. Alhamdulillah, thank you Profesor Ueda. Welcome to Jakarta, Indonesia. This is the first time Professor Hideaki Ueda come to Indonesia, and Dr. Hideaki Ueda is professional physician and clinical in 2000. I think not so instructor, yeah, 2003 and 11 until now. He's Vice President Kanagawa Children Medical Center, and he also teach in hospital and instructor of cardiology, Department Cardiology, Kanagawa Children Medical Center, and until now as a consultant and chairman of cardiology, Department of Cardiology, Kanagawa Children Hospital. And now maybe the first session we will learn from him about the tips of transcatheter closure of PDA, and then after that the safety and limitation of efficacy and limitation of the transcatheter closure of PDA, and the next is PDA stenting. I think for Dr. Hideaki Ueda, it's time yours. Before Dr. Hideaki Ueda, maybe welcome speech from Dr. Winda Azwani first. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Subrahaita, and good afternoon to all, especially for our distinguished guest, Professor Hidek Ueda. We are really delighted to have you here in Indonesia. We hope this good start for us to collaborate between hospitals, and also we have support from the Ministry of Health. Thank you. Terima kasih kepada semua teman-teman dari RSAB Harapan kita, dari tim kardiologi anak. Kita akan meneruskan kerjasama dengan Kanagawa Children Medical Center, terutama dengan Prof. Hideaki Ueda untuk di bidang kardiologi intervensi. Kita berharap agar pasien-pasien kita dapat ditangani dengan lebih baik dengan keilmuan dan teknologi yang terbaru. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih, Bunda. Mungkin untuk mempersingkat waktu, kita akan dengarkan Profesor Hideaki Ueda yang menyampaikan bagaimana penutupan PDA transkateter dimulai dari tips of the transkateter closure PDA. Profesor Hideaki Ueda, is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hideaki Ueda. It's my great honor to intend to be here in a very important day, or the Independent Day, and I would like to appreciate to all of the committee and Dr. Subrahaiter, Dr. Winner, to work hardly to invite me. So I was very delighted because when I first saw the Dr. Winner had a visit to our institution, that was 2018, just about 5 years ago. And since then, this kind of the collaboration have been worked with these 5 years, and it was a dream to visit, to be here. So I'm very delighted to be here, and I would like to appreciate it to all of you. So first of all, I would like to talk about the topics focus on the PDAs. So next slide, please. So I would like to first talk about the concepts and the device selections. And the second topics will be focused on what we choose the devices when the patient body size is small. And the third point is what we should consider when using AD01. And the last topics is focused when the ampullus size is small and limited. So next slide, please. So I would like to ask you just a small question. Is transcatheter PD closure with ADO easy? I think most of you may answer maybe yes or no, but for my opinion, the next slide, please. Personally, I feel that most of the cases would get straightforward to select the size, to deploy the devices, but sometimes the experience and some kind of tips required to avoid complications. I would like to talk about those kind of topics. Next slide, please. So when we compared to the ASD closure with PDA closures, there are several points of issues. First of all, during the implantation. Next please. Well, as you know, looking at the TEE, we could see the ASD devices sitting placed nicely against the aortic atrial wall, and we can see whether the devices would compress against the valsalva sinus, or maybe compress the upper side of the LA loop, something like that. But still, PDA devices, we would not use the TEE, so we could not get obtain the images from the DEE. So we should examine and determine whether to detach or not with using the TTE. But still, in some cases, those kind of image would be very poor to determine, makes very difficult to uh, to uh, um, to select the size, maybe to get conclusion whether to deploy detach or not. So the next things, the evaluations of devices, the AAC may be easy, but still the PDA devices may get very difficult to understand how the device is located between the PDA. But still, I think the TTE works very well and has a very important role. So any times I would do the TTE to check the conditions of the devices. Next, please. So, but still, I would like to say that both kind of the interventions may be difficult to predict what would happen once you let the devices out. You know, when you detach devices, maybe in some cases those devices might get migrated somewhere else. So next slide, please. So there is a very famous classifications of PDAs, which called the Krichenko type. It is classified in 6 types: A, B, C, D, E, F. The most of the majority would be A or C. So in some very rare cases, we could see maybe D or E, but very interestingly, the premature babies, such as 10,000 thousands grams, maybe under this thousands grams, would be type F. We call them hockey type. And we will not see in a large large body size in type F. So next slide, please. So majority is A or B. So there are many types of devices which is placed to close the PDAs. ADU1, ADU2, ADUAS, we call them piccolo, maybe a vascular plug or type 1, maybe type 2, maybe type 4 may be used, but the majority, more than 90%, will be closed with ADU1. Next slide, please. So look at the basic structures of the ADU1. We call them the size, for example, 8.6 device or maybe 10.8 device, which means for example, 8.6 means that their inner part of the devices, which is the most narrow places. Can I pointer? The most narrowest place, this is the pulmonary artery side, which means for example, this 10.8. 8 means this is the 8 millimeters wide, which is the PA side, and 10 for the aortic size, and we call them skirt positions. And we have to be always careful of this area because this is very long distance, 14. We have to be always careful about this part of the portions. So if it is 10.8, which means that this is 10, this is 8. 8.6 means this is 8, and here this is 6. And there's a formula when the PDA size, for example, 4, we have to plus 2, which means that we have to use at least 6mm devices. So the devices we should implant should be 8.6. If the PDA is 6mm, the formula should be +2, so that means we should use the 8mm. At least the PA side has 8mm, so we should use the 10.8. So next slide, please. There are, as you can see, there are 5 types of the devices: 5.4, 6.4, 8.6, 10.8, and 12.10. And this is the part of the skirt. No. This is the length of the skirt, and this is the length of the body size. Longitudinal length is written at this area. Okay, next slide, please. Well, this is the article which was published at the 2009. The article told us this patient was abandoned and referred to ligation because the patient had 6mm diameters, and then it intended to implant 10.8. But as you can see, the ADO one, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next. This is the shape of the ADO. You can see the ADO is now blocking the descending outer, which means that the device is now protruded inside the descending outer, make the stenosis size. Looks like a coarctation, makes a coarctation of the outer here. There's a pressure gradient, should be pressure gradient around here. So they decided that these devices should not be placed in this area. So that's why they have referred to ligations. So look at these cases. What is the case? What is the problem among these cases? The patient is a small body size, large PDA, and short PDA, and also the limited space of ampulla. The ampulla is very small. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Sorry. I think the best view is you can use this another. So, particularly, I think.
Can and here, can I close this one? I would like to show our patient cases. The patient was 6 months old, with the body size was 6 kilograms. The patient had 3.7 millimeters PDAs. Looks like not typical. We classify as A, but still it looks like also type C. The ampulla size was 8.5 millimeters. The length was 12.3 millimeters. And we decided to put the 8.6. Here, top point.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So here you can see the PDA, but still this kind of the PDA always dilated. It doesn't seem to be stable. It may, the size may change during the contractions. And then this is the measurement, something like this. And then if we implant ADO something like this, we should maybe to give up. If if there's no tips, we could not implant, we cannot get treated with the ADO1. So we should do something else. So what is the other tips? If the problem is that the skirt of the aortic side is quite large, so we should reduce the volume of the skirt, which I would like to say that pull the device into the pool with a little bit of the outer disc out. It means that the volume of the skirt should be maybe 2/3, maybe near to 1/2. It's a very small volume, something like this. So if we could able to implant this like this, as you can see, the skirt is very small and is located anterior side. As you can see, there is no apparent stenosis inside. It's the descending aorta. So maybe some of you will be considering about concern because if the devices will stick out into the pulmonary artery, it may cause the peripheral pulmonary stenosis, especially of the left pulmonary artery stenosis. As you can see, the devices is located just upper side, something like this. It will not cover all of the orifice of the left pulmonary artery. So it would not cause the apparent left pulmonary artery stenosis. So I decided to detach it and see the next view. You can see there's a smoky leakage, something like this. But I would like to say that, please look at this part. The upper side and the lower side of the devices, there is no leakage among this area. Only the leakage is from the middle of the devices. Those kind of the smoky leakage will be disappeared maybe in the next, or maybe within 40 hours. So looking at the AP view, this is very important. Pictures are all 30 degrees. You can see that the skirt is not protruding among the descending aorta, which means that there is no apparent pressure gradient. So the patient, the shunt was disappeared next morning. So with kind of the tips, the patient was treated very efficiently with the ADO1. So the next cases is the 5 months, a 5-kilogram male, 21 trisomy, and PDA was 3.9 millimeters, type C, near to type A. As you can see, there's it looks like a tubular type, and the most how do you say, important things, what I would like to say that the outer diameters, especially after the third branch bifurcations among here, is very narrow. So if you place a large, for example, 8.6, maybe 10.8, the aortic side stenosis would appear soon after the implantation. So we have to be very careful, and this kind of the PD closure is very difficult. So if we use the same, this is the next question. Would you try the ADO first? Maybe with further operation? Well, I don't know the exact number of what the interventions of Japan would select it, but I don't think that all of us would try to do the interventions. maybe some of them would refer to operation. But still, in these cases, I would like to choose the ADU1. Looking at the picture which I have been planted, there you can see the point that I didn't let them fully expanding the skirt, let them a little bit smaller volume of the skirt, and then the other is sticking out to the outer side. As you can see, there is no apparent shunt between the upper and the lower part, and only the shunt versus shunt is coming from the middle. And what I would like to say that there is no apparent stenosis among this area. So what I felt that this should be okay. And also there, what we concerned was the devices is not skirt or does not protruding inside to the descending aorta. So this is the after detachment. Here you can see there's a smoky leakage, but still there's no leakage among the upper side and the lower side. It's only from the middle. Maybe some way concerning that the recess shunt will be significant, but still, due to my experience, those kind of shunt will be disappeared within the 48 hours. There is no apparent stenosis among this area. Looking at the picture of the same cases from the AP view, you can see that the device is located far from the descending aorta. You can see there is no stenosis among this area. So you have to use many kinds of the angles to be sure that the devices will not works what was against the aorta. So the point to consider when using the AD1. Well, compared to the previous cases, you may see that the PDA size is not so large. The PDA size seems to be 2.1, typically type A. So these cases was done by my fellows. He selected AD1, 5, 4. So this is the first trial. Here, at the glance, you can see that there is no residual shunt. But when you focus very carefully, there is a very untypical shunt among this area. And also, you can see the devices is not stable. The positions moves very quickly. Again, there's a resistance among here. Okay. So I asked him to replace it again, to pull that much more stronger. After the replacement, what happened to the AD1? There is no shunt among the lower part, and then you can find that the AD1 is fixed strictly against to the aortic wall, pulmonary aortic wall. It's not moving so fast. This is the previously implanted image compared to those. Please remember this kind of difference. It moves very, shifted. It doesn't move so much, and there is no apparent shunt among here. There's a shunt among here. So this is the after detection. This is the final image. You can see that the ADO looks very nicely placed among the PDAs, does not move so much. But still, I would like to say that the using the 5-4 is a little bit difficult because the difference of the 5-4 and the next size 6-4, it may cover the same diameter of PDA, but still, what is the difference? The difference is the length of the ADU1. The 5-4 has only 5 millimeters compared to the 6-4 has 7. So only 2 millimeters difference. But those difference has a very important meaning because to control the ADU1 for 5-4 is very tricky because it has very short length compared to the 5-4. 6-4 have 2 millimeters longer. So it should, this kind of phenomenon would not happen using 6-4. So personally, I always use 6-4 in very rare cases. I think the 5-4 is acceptable, but still, if possible, please use 6-4 in the very small size of PDAs because it has a longer body length, lets the risk of getting migrated lessen. So please keep in mind of this length of the devices. So this is the most difficult cases of the advanced case, I would like to say. When the ampullous space is very small. Well, the PDA is 2 years, 8 kilograms, and it looks like a type D or type E, and PDA has a 3.8 millimeters. And as you can see, there is no appearance space in ampulla. So in such cases, what we can do if we put the skirt among this area, the stenosis of the aorta would be caused by the skirt. So in such cases, the tip of the stick, there is no skirt around here. It's squeezed. It looks like a mushroom, right? And then they stretch the remainder to form a mushroom shape, and then let the other part stick out in the main PA. So after the detachment, it also looks like a mushroom, but still there is no apparent stenosis among this part of the aorta. It looks very nicely. So you don't have to let the skirt fully deploy. You may change the shape of the skirt by letting the small amount of volume by squeezing the shape of the skirt. You can use this kind of techniques when the patient has only small size, very small limited ampulla body. The patient had a chance to do the angiogram by the other reasons, and we would like to do the angiogram. What would happen to those kind of the mushroom deformities? No PPS, no coarctation, no pressure gradient was observed. There you can see the devices looks very nicely. So I would like to also present a case which required to size down the ADO. So the pictures which I have presented is the 10 months, 18 kilograms, and PDA was type A. The PDA diameter was 6, and looking at the lateral view, the diameter was 5.6 millimeters. And first of all, I implanted the ADO 10A. The image is not so clear, but maybe you can able to see the devices is now protruding inside the upper side of the aorta, around here, right? So I did, looking at the echo, there was a pressure gradient. The maximum of the velocity was up above 2 meters per second. So I don't like the pictures, so I decided that we should maybe do the size down. So before the size down, I measured what is the length of the diameters. Looking at the fluoroscopy, we measure the waist of the ABO 86. This is around 10.8 was 5.2 millimeters. So that means if we use the 86 may cover is much wider. So maybe, if possible, ADO 86 may work for this case. So I retrieved the 10.8, and then, so then I implanted again. Oops. And then implanted again 86. The picture is not so good, but please believe me that there is no clear stenosis on here. So as these pictures, the skirt is not protruding anymore against the descending aorta. So the conclusion is, if you pay maximum attention to the handling of the aorta disc, which means that aorta skirt, I think you will have a good chance to get successful. But once if you found something wrong, please do not hesitate to try other sides of ADO. Maybe if the devices was a little bit unstable, you feel, you may choose the one more larger size, and you felt that the maybe retention disc or skirt maybe do wrong things against the descending aorta, you may choose the smaller size. And please do the wiggle test once you change the devices. The wiggle may help you to whether to determine you can deploy, you can release or not. If the devices get very easily migrated before detaching, you can be very easily retrieved. So you may have a chance to change the size of the disc. Maybe one size larger may helps you well. So if you think it's about 2 points of this one, against the retention disc or skirt, and the size, to change the size if something wrong happens. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prof. Weda. We learn so much from you because this is the thing step by step, and maybe we learn from you about the view and maybe skirt of the device. We must see the device structure, and then the structure of PDA, and many we learn, and maybe we can discuss one by one. After that, maybe we can learn about the efficacy and limitation, or we discuss first
Yeah,
this
of course.
implementation. Okay, maybe there is a question from the audience. Nanda, have a okay. I think I will ask about the view. We from here we do angiography, EP and LAO, and we see you use right
RLO.
yeah, LAO 30 maybe the consider for the I think why you choose the view
Okay.
view. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for a nice question. I think you have pointed out very important things because the determine the size of the PDAs is very difficult. So looking at using the RAO positions, maybe 20 or 30 degrees, you may get very clear image where the ADO will stick out from the outer. If you use the LAO, maybe the PDA will just locate it just above the outer, which means that to determine the size of the PDA would be a little bit difficult for you. So RAO positions I think, is the most good way to qualify the size of the PDAs. And also, I always use the lateral view to see that whether the retention skirt of the disc will protrude or not during the interventions. And also, I always use the TTE echo with measurement of the peak velocities among the descending aorta, left pulmonary arteries, and same times. If both of those measurements seems to be suitable, I will just decide to get released. But still, if I found something wrong, I will always choose another size. Then if you have two sizes measurement, you can compare one by one. And then you can, I think, to make a conclusion, which is better or not, is not so difficult to you. Because only one type, if you use only one type of devices, it should be difficult because the option is to just letting go and just only to give up. There's no other options. But if you implant the other sides of devices, you can choose which is better for you. So I will always try to use the another size. I don't hesitate. I don't want to hesitate to compare about the two conditions.
Okay, thank you. I think dependent of the structure of the PDA. Okay, so
Oh, pakai pemanasan dulu, stretching dulu.
Oke, Ivana masuk. Ivana.
there is a interruption. Bisa, okay.
Well, I believe if the patient has a larger size of much more than body weight of heavier than 20 or 30 kilograms, there should be those kind of complications of making the coarctations or maybe LPPS is not be frequently observed. But once the patient size is small, we should always keep in mind those kind of skirts maybe do worse things against the ampullar, maybe the narrow aortics, aorta. So please mind about the conditions of the skirt, which I have presented in these lectures.
Okay, thank you, Weda. We learned about the skirt because of the obstruction of the aorta. So you do the TEE after the implanted device and measure the velocity of aorta and PA the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This is new for us. I think maybe we can use this technique for the minimalized complication. And then Dr. Winda have a question. Yeah. Okay. Then yes.
Thank you, Dr. Very interesting presentation. I'd like to know from your experience about the tubular PDA.
Tubular
tubular.
Tubular.
Yeah. So, what is the risk factor for migration of the device?
Oh, I think that is a very good question because if the tubular types, there is no narrow kinetic spaces, so maybe the devices will get spread. If once you choose a smaller size, the devices have high possibility to change its position. So in such situation, I would do the wiggle very carefully. Once you found something in a small pool, if the change the device has changed its deformity, I always use one side, largest one. But still, if the PDA is larger than 6, 7, it should be very difficult to treat, especially tubular types. It's a problem.
So, from your experience for a particular type, the tubular type, yeah, I mean for ADO1, what is the most important measurement in tubular type?
Each tubular type is long. This difficult.
It's very
choice for the device.
So, if possible, I would use most larger size, maybe 1 or 2 sizes of it. But still, in small cases, it doesn't work. If the patient looks like maybe adult or near to the adult side, I think you would have a good chance. 12 can more. That very large size. But still, if the patient is very small, I think it should be very risky to implant to let it release. Because the device is like, well, the problem is that the PDAs change this shape during the contractions, right? Especially when the cases of Down syndrome, the digression will be happen because the measurement of PDA cases is very difficult. Because I feel that I think those cases it's very high flexibility will get very easy to expand. Once you place it in the next one, the device is
Great.
So in such cases, maybe you can maybe place the balloon and then let the dilate it measure something like that is the hydrogen balloon.
Yeah.
Then maximum diameter.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Winda.
Yeah, thank you
Enough.
so
Okay,
much.
thank you, Dr. Winda. I think if tubular and long tortoise or long and tubular, you suggest to ligate or still catheter closure?
Well, To be honest, I would just try to have a sentence.
Okay.
And it's difficult, at least difficult to just especially, but fortunately, I didn't have so much kids to do that. But above 6 or 7, it's get very deep. Place the correct way, correct.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Weda. One more, maybe I try to explore the pulmonary hypertension because the PDA make pulmonary hypertension so fast, and how we evaluate pulmonary hypertension after device implantation. Maybe before we can use the velocity or pressure gradient tricuspid valve, but after implantation, we can still like TTE, or we do some measurement. I think pressure gradient.
Yeah, I think you have pointed out very important things because after the interventions, to evaluate the true pulmonary artery pressure is maybe get very difficult for us to evaluate true value. So in such cases, when we found out if there is some kind of findings of the pulmonary artery pressure is high, evaluate the pulmonary artery pressure before the interventions, and then we try to figure out what is the resistance of the output. And we did this whole study for searching the true RP. And after the intervention, at the same time, because the long sheets will be placed just above maybe luckily the long sheets will be located in the main PA, maybe if difficult will be placed into the other. So with those the long sheets, you may insert the bottom catheters or maybe GR catheter. We can evaluate the true pulmonary artery pressures, maybe by the pressures, what's become, what changes. If you found that the mean pulmonary artery pressure higher than 20, I think there should be pulmonary artery hypertension. So maybe in such situation, we would like to administrate start a pulmonary PAH drugs, such as sildenafil. Maybe for Down syndrome, maybe we use the oxidant pump for the oxidant. So that is, but still you add some treatment against the pulmonary hypertension. And after 6 months later, we evaluate do the same study by the to be sure that the larger application will get much more better for this short time. So we always to be sure that it happens.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Weda. So we learn much about the transcatheter closure of PDA and PH, pulmonary hypertension, and to choose the device, how to maybe best view for the delineate PDA. We learn about the AP, anterior posterior, RAO 30, 220 or 30, lateral or LAO 90. Maybe this session maybe enough for the presentation and discussion. And I think maybe next session, whether please. present the next efficacy and limitation of the transcatheter closure of PDA of ASD. ESD? No, ESD. Oh, ESD. Sorry. Yeah. It's time is yours.
So again, thank you for presenting to my lectures, and I have to apologize that previously I have informed to Dr. Bunda I would like to talk about the efficacy and the limitation of transcatheter PD closure, but I just wanted to talk to you about the AC closure. So this time, the previous topics was about the PDA, so I was just wanted to talk about the AC closures. Well, as you know, that the closing the ASD maybe get very challenging in some cases. So I would like to talk about those topics. So, yes, please. So what is the anatomy and the indications of transcatheter AC closures? And let's talk topics about the history of the AC closures. And the last topics about how we treat and what it will be changed in new futures. The first, I would like to talk about the anatomy and indications of the closures. I do know that among all majority of you would understand about this kind of things, but I would like to briefly introduce about this among these kind of topics. This case is 3 years old, and then, as you can see, this is the 3D TEE image. During the contraction, the ASD change very continuously. As you can see, we have to measurement the most longest part of the ASD and the shortest part. As you can see, those diameters is moving very fast. And the majority of the ASD looks like so-called oval shapes. Well, as you know, that the ASD is classified about the 3 types. First of all, the secondary types is majority, but the maybe other 20%, there is a sinus venosus type, which is not considered to be a good indication for the transcatheter closures. In the very rare cases, there is a coronary sinus type, which the most difficult cases for the interventions, which should be referred to the operations. So the secondary type is a good indication, but the others is not good indication. So when we look for the AHA guideline, they tell that the interventions classified in several types of ASDs. And when we look at when the patient had an evidence of alveolar overload, they tell that it is classified as class 1B. So that means due to the image of TTE, when the right-sided heart looks larger than the left-sided heart, you should send the patient for the interventions. There's no question about that. So it does not depend on the size of the defect. It does not depend on the condition either. So when you found out the defect is just only maybe 4 or 6 millimeters, but still the right-sided heart dilated, there's no question to go forward for the interventions. So when we look from the European ESC guidelines, they say the same things. The evidence of the alveolar volume of overload is classified as class 1B. So there's no questions when we see the RA size and RV volume is dilated, the patient should be treated. So what is the history of the transcatheter AST closures? Well, looking at the previous report, the first trial was reported by the surgeons, King and Mills, reported at 1976. As you can see, the disc looks like very similar, which we use right now. It looks like an unpluggers. But after that, very many various type of the devices was reported, but still the most of them didn't get measured. The investigated was stopped during the follow-up. So only there are several types of the devices which were able to get FDA approved or CE marked as a ASD closures. One is the most famous, the most well-used devices, unplugged septal closures, and next from the Helix septal closures from the United States, and the third from the Germany, Occlutech Flex 2 occluders, and the fourth is from the Celoplex from the China. These had a very similar advantage. The advantage of these good devices is one is very user-friendly design, which means very easy to delivery and deploy, and has very low risk of complication, which means that low risk, a low occurrence of erosions and embolizations, and has a wide range of size variations. And the most important thing was the easy to retrieve. Well, as you know, the most severe complications is called as erosions, which means once you implant the devices during the contraction continuously, the edges of the devices will lose, protrude against to the upper side of the LA, maybe protrude inside to the sinus valsalva of the aorta, which cause the tamponade required the emergency surgery procedures. Here, as they looking at those pictures, the devices were protrude inside the aorta, which causes tamponade. Well, these kind of the devices has a similar way to deploy. This is the pictures which was as you can see at the Melbourne Children's Hospital's homepage. First of all, you have to deliver the long sheets, maybe deliver catheters amount to the pass through the secondum type ASD, and then secondly, you have to spread the LLDs and then pull back against to the aortic wall, and then you deploy the LLDs, and then you will release the devices. So this is the pictures of using the unplugged septal occluder. The device is now located, the tips of it located inside the pulmonary vein. You pull back a little bit, and then let the left atrium this device deploy, and then pull back as it's the aortic wall here, and then when this attached to the aortic wall, then you will deliver the RS side of disc here. And then this is the final pictures before the detachment. You can see very clearly, this is the L disc here, this is the R disc here, this is the waist. Okay, the waist is here from here, this is the defect of the ASD. We usually use the cranial 35 and LAO35 if you use the contrast, you can obtain the four chamber view, such as the four chamber view of the looking at the same picture of the TEE. Well, this is the figures which was treated in our institutions. As you can see, the majority of the patients was 3 to 6, and the older cases was seldom. This is the pictures of the TEE probe. Here you can, when you move the position of the TEE, you can able to obtain a various type of the conditions of the heart and the valve and the septums. Well, this is a schema about the ribs. You have to a measurement, for example, SVC rim, posterior rim, IVC rim, AV valve rim, outing valve, and super rim. When we started since 2006, the AC closures was required to have much more than body weight of 15 kilograms. And also the rims, except the outer rim, the other rims was required longer than 5 millimeters. Well, if you wanted to implant the devices, it should be look like this. But in this kind of the at the development of the image, we can use the TEE 3D image very nicely. You can see that the devices is just located just in the middle of the septum. So this means that the devices, defect has a located in the middle, has a little bit distance between the outer and a little bit far from the IVC, which means that this is a good indication for the catheters. So, well, there's a complications of the erosions. So if you use two larger things, what would happen? The patient had a sizing balloons, which measurement was around 18 millimeters. So the devices of 19.5 millimeters was tried to occlude it. But what happened was advanced AV block was happened, something like below. So once we found those kind of the ACC abnormalities, we have to consider whether to let them all off or maybe we should size them. I decided to switch to the 18 and found that looking at the picture, this is the device is 19.5. You can see here the compressions is occurred at this area, and then we switch to the 18. You can see there's no appearance here. Look at very nicely against to the outing valve. So here there's no apparent compression, but here I don't like these pictures, and also there's ECC abnormalities. So in such cases, size down should be safer to avoid to cause the complications. So at the beginning, the patient was required to have much more than 15 kilograms, and then except the outer rim, the other rims was requested to have longer than 5 millimeters. So at that time, the numbers of who was able to be treated by the transcatheters was just only 50%, which was very disappointing. So we had to think about it, what we should do. So at this time, we would not consider about the other limbs because even if there is a multiple limbs deficiency, we would like to perform the transcatheterals. And also, we would like to challenge against the smaller size. So at this moment, in our institutions, much more than 90 cases would be treated by the catheters. I would like to show the 5 years, 70 kilograms boy. The patient was diameter at 12 to 14 millimeters. And as you can see, the rims has only posterior rims 1.7, IVC rims is only 1.5. So previously, we have to give up these cases because this rim does not have longer than 5 millimeters. But looking at the IVC rim here, it looks like sticking out, but still the IVC rim looks very short. But the diameter measurement was 18. And looking at the 3D TE image, it's not clearly presented, but still the IVC ring deficiency is being limited at this area. So from this picture, we can tell that this is not the typically inferior sinus venous type. If the rims of the IVCs is deficiencies is wider than this area, we should abandon the interventions. But only the limited area we would perform the ASD closures. Here, the measurement of the diameter showed 19.5 to 20.5 millimeters. Here, this is the pictures of the, we would like to show what's the difference of the ambulatory septal occluder and the fibular flex to occlutect. As you can see, the ASDs has a advantage because the distal end of the left atrial disc turns inwards, which means that it has an increasing force with grasping the ribs. Compared to the plateau-septal occluder, fibular flex has an advantage of those distal ends of discs will move away from each other, which means that it may the rims of the grasping ring, the force should be much more weaker than the plateau, but maybe it may reduce to the possibility of the erosions. So in Japan, maybe if the aortic ring deficiency, the majority of the interventionists may choose the occlutect devices. But still, if the patient had a IVC ring deficiency, the most interventionists would prefer using the ambulatory septal occluder. For these cases, I had used the fibular flex 90.5 millimeter implanted. And this is the picture before the touching. You can see the devices located nicely. But still, there is a residual shunt among the lower part of the defect because the disc cannot grasp because there is a lack of the rims among here. So you always, in such cases, there is a small shunt among this area. And then after the detachment, the IVCs of devices showed a slightly increase in resistance where the rim was not pinched around here. But this cases was followed up for longer than 3 years, and still there is no resistance observed in these cases. So what we consider when we choose the small body size cases. The region of death, at the beginning, we were requested the patient body size should have larger than 50 kilograms. But at this moment, I don't think that is the important thing, because the patient I would like to represent of these cases, he was referred to us when he was age of 2. The body weight was just only 11 kilograms. And then SD diameters was the longest part, was 14 millimeters, as you can see in the left-sided photograph. And then next 9 months, at the 9 months later, the size of the body size was 13.4 kilograms, but the SD diameter stretched, get larger, up to 18 millimeters. Just only 9 months, the diameter has changed 4 millimeters. But still, the boy has not have enough, does not have enough body size, just below the 15. But I was afraid that if we wait until the body size will reach the 15 kilograms, maybe the SD diameter will reach 23, maybe 24, requiring 26 or 27 millimeter devices. The devices was 18.2 millimeters, so I choose the 21 devices implanted here. It looks very well, but still, if we waited until the size, maybe the defect will get much larger. We have to implant 24 millimeters. Maybe we have to use it 27. As you can see, if we plant 27 millimeter devices, the pictures of the after interventions looks like a lot of the devices which cover the whole septum, right? It looks like the devices located just in the middle of the heart. So this is the growth chart of the standard Chinese children. This is one, and most of them here, one of the 10 kilograms, 2, the middle was reached at 12, 3 will reach to the 15 or just below 15. But in some cases, in these there is cases of the small body weight gain here, and if the patients look like this, we should wait. Once if the 15 kilograms, we have to wait till maybe 6 or something like that. So it should be required a long time. So how long should we wait for these cases? So I thought that 15 is not an important thing. So at this moment, if the patient had a good chance to get treated, I would just send the patient to the catheters. So at this moment, maybe 12 or 13 kilograms is acceptable for me. So, just only 2 kilograms, it makes, I think, the durations of waiting time should get less. The next case is 3 old boys, 14 kilograms, and the patient had no rims of the aortic rim. Posterior rim was 0.9. IVC rim was almost 0 around here, and the sizing balloons was 35 millimeters. So due to the measurement of the sizing balloon, we should use the amperosusceptible fluid 30 millimeters. But as you can see, the picture looks like very large amount against the heart. So I didn't feel like to let them go. So at this cases, I just retrieve it and refer to the operations. The next case is presented here is 5 years old females, 16 kg and implanted 28. Well, you can see the devices looks like larger. It looks like sticking out for the original shape of the heart, silhouette sign. It looks like a double silhouette. So is this kind of the image is acceptable or you? It depends on each philosophy, I think. So I think there should be some kind of limitations. So again, I would like to talk about the erosions. As the unplugged septal occluders in our domestic data, among the 12,000 cases, there was 14 cases of erosions. But still, after 2015, none of them have occurred the erosions. And compared to the data of the fibular plexus, fibular septal occluder, due to the report by the CCR 2016, there were no cases of erosion. But in Japan, we had a 9 cases erosion among the 60 cases. So that means the percentage was 0.051, 0.015 percentage. So there is a little bit different reasons of why the erosion would happen. As you can see, the intermittent contact here, something like this, and maybe strain, maybe protrusions, and maybe caused by due to the motions. And the most difficult things to determine the true size, which we call them malalignment type, the secondary and the primary septums is not in a one line. It's looked like this. So if this kind of the ASD, once you place the devices, as you can see, maybe the other side of the disc may protrude against the sinus of the cerebellum. So among these cases, the risk of the erosion may have much more higher than the normal cases. I have one case of the erosion, which I had done at the 20 cases. At that time, my experience was very poor, and the techniques, I didn't have enough techniques. So during these cases, to implant the devices, I had to take times because for me to implant the devices properly, it will take longer than 1 hour during the deploying the devices, which means that my skill was not good enough. The patient was 6 years old girl, 21 kilograms, aortic rim was 0. The others was had enough years. So at present time, these cases should be not so difficult, but at that time, I was just only these 20 cases. So after the 6 years, after implantation, the erosion had happened. What was the reason of erosion? Was looking at the during to the operation, the RA disc was protruding against the aortic wall. So we always should be very carefully to get follow-up for implanting those mechanical devices. So when we are considering about the oversize, what some of the interventionists will consider to get size down. But if you do size down so much, the migration would happen. So it's a balance of thinking about the erosion and thinking about the migrations. Due to the those devices, unplugged septal occluder and fibular plexus, there was no apparent difference from both using both devices. So the risk of the migrations is the same. And also the risk of the efficiency was not so different from each time, but still, as one report tell us that the using the figure flex had a age and there was a difference from fluoroscopy time, but I feel that there's no apparent changes difference from those two devices. So what is the topics in Japan and how it will be changed in near futures? Since 2021, the most newest SD devices was deployed by the board approved in 2021 August. The picture I would like to show you, the GC8 Gore cardioform ACE occluder. You can compress the devices very softly, and there's only 5 variations of the types. The ASD had a typically 17.6 millimeters here, and then this is the altigram short. I'm sorry, the IVC rim short, but the others had enough rims. This is the deploying the picture here, the arrow disc here, and then this arrow disc here. From looking at the lateral view, this is the arrow disc here, and then the arrow disc is coming out. This is the final picture here. You can see this is the LA disc here, our disc here, and then between the both discs, there is a septum. So the picture which I had presented, but during the follow-up, the disc will be sprayed over very nicely against the aorta, which means that the possibility of getting the erosions should be very low. And at the present time, there is no apparent report causing the erosions. But there are several trials which was made from the biosolvable formulations. From the generally biostar devices, the collagen extracted from the small intestine was
Pig or coal. Small intestine of the pig or
a pig. Was tried to place it. And there was another trial which was done by the Chinese groups using the polylactic acid. But among those two devices, there is no further report, so we could not able to find whether it is effective or not. But since there are several investigations is now going on, so well at this moment we could not tell that these kind of devices works very well. But still, we will have to search of the possibility of using those kinds of biosolvable formulations. So this is my conclusion. The catheter intervention for ASD in children is effective and safe, but we should be very careful to have select and be very careful evaluations against the variable closures devices when enable transcatheter AC closure in more than 90% of AC cases. So each of them should be treated very carefully. So once you plant the larger size, maybe the erosion release will happen. If you choose two small devices, maybe the migration will happen. But still, if you choose the devices very carefully, I believe the most of them they will be treated, but only by the transcatheters. Thank you for attention.
okay. Thank you, Prof. Ueda. A nice presentation about ESD and this challenging case. And congratulations for more than 300 cases in 3 to 6 years old children. I think this is more challenging in our hospital, Women and Children Hospital. I think we have more case, the limited, maybe limited experience. We do the small baby or young kid. I think we proceed to with the egg or the weight. So our experience, we proceed to transcatheter after 4 years, and then now we can proceed in more than 10 kilo. What they consider weight or egg for to proceed the transcatheter ESD closure in your experience? Thank you.
Thank you for nice questions. And well, as you can see that the probe of the TEE, which was available for the 3D image, has a little bit wide, which means that if you want to place the probe inserting against the esophageal, we feel very resistant to let them go inside the 3D probe images. So during those procedures, I found that I just want to use the 3D image. That's why I just wait for the 12 or 13 kilograms. If you don't mind to use the 3D images, maybe you can go for the interventions, maybe 10 kilograms. That's okay. But I found that the majority of those cases who the body weight is around 10 kilograms, they don't have a significant heart failure, because in most of them the body size increases, not so bad. So there is no apparent, how to say, findings. There's no symptom, and the majority will not increase getting the respiratory infections. But still, if you found that the patient had catch a cold very frequently, maybe had a pneumonia very much times, maybe we should go further for the treatment. At that time, maybe we refer to the surgery, but still, we would not do the surgery even among those above 10 kilograms, because almost all of them do not have any symptoms, so we just let them grow. So at this moment, I don't feel, how to say, I'm not feel like necessity to move on to the next treatment. So that's why. But if there is some reason, I should go further for the treatment. So the reason that I wait for 12, 13 is to let them insert a label against the esophagus, because it's limit. I think it depends on the box.
Yes. Okay. So 20 to 13.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if the patient has much more than that, around 10 kilograms, maybe we could go for the intervention.
Intervention, yes. Yes.
So unfortunately, I don't have such a cases. So the
Yeah.
patient who are suffering from heart failure, suffering from the frequent respiratory infections or pneumonia, if something like that, something happened, occurred, maybe we should go for the treatment.
Thank you, Prof. Ueda. I think the ESD is more challenging because for the baby, we must see the body weight gaining and then heart failure, RV overload, I think. So we must follow up the patient, body weight, and then recurrent cough and the clinical condition. So maybe Dr. Winda have a question. Okay, time is yours.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you so much, Dr. Weda, for your very nice presentation. I just want to ask about the LA size.
LA size. LA size.
LA size.
Yes, please give us explanation regarding how to decide about the LA size and the device size.
Okay.
That is the first question.
Yeah.
The second is, I think we need to emphasize about the difference of the type of the device regarding the age of the patient, age or the weight of the weight. I think the weight of the patient and the device type. Just explain more about it.
I think you had pointed a very good question. And it's a little bit difficult for me for answer. So, to say the truth, I don't mind about the LA size because in some cases there is a really has a very limited space of LA, and it may get very difficult to deploy the LEDs, especially using the GCA devices. And still using the Unplugged, maybe the Oculotech, we can use the approach of using the pulmonary vein techniques, which mean that we could introduce inside the left upper pulmonary vein, maybe using left upper pulmonary vein. We could let them deploy the LEDs, even the LED space is limited. And also, if we could use the maybe double carved lung sheaths, which we call them house dose sheaths, it may able to place the devices place horizontal against the atrial septum. So the devices, once it will get parallel against the atrial septum, it should be located very nicely. So the most important thing is there are some kind of techniques to let them spread over against the atrial septum parallel. So I don't measurement of the LA size so much precisely, just only maybe the diameter of the LA size or something like that. But still using the GCA devices. The GCA devices will require the most large volumes compared to the ASO or the figular flex to Oculotech devices. So at that time, the GCA requires the LA size. So it means that if you want to implant the larger size, for example, 44 millimeter devices against the 3 years old, maybe just around 15 kilograms, the devices would compress the aortic sinus valsalva, maybe cause the airway block soon after deploying the devices, which would not be able to release it. We always should retrieve it. But using those ASO, maybe the figular flex tip, it would not cause such kind of problem. And the most important thing is Unplugged septal occlusions is the most smallest volume. So in the small case, maybe the ASO should be works very nicely. For example, for around maybe 10 kilograms, the LS size is very limited. In such cases, the upper septal occlusion should work nicely in such small case. The next question is about the type of the septum ASD. The sinus venosus type should be very difficult because if it is located upper side, the devices may compress against the upper side of the LA roof, so it may maybe block the return of the pulmonary vein. So the PVO, pulmonary vein obstructions, may happen after you deploy the ASL devices or maybe fingerflex devices. So I think it's not good indication for these cases. If the coronary sinus defect, if the defect size is not so large, maybe you can able to close it, but still it requires quite experience.
Yeah.
So I did not recommend
We didn't do
beginning, so you should let them wait for a while, and if you gain much more experience, maybe you can get a good chance to close it. So, yeah, in the beginning, it's not recommended to close.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Indah, Prof. Weda. I think it's a so interesting thing. I think nice presentation, and maybe once again I want to ask you about we have maybe limited resources for TEE. So what do you want to suggest us if we didn't have TEE? Is it possible to do ASD closure with TTE? And then once again about now we have experience from another center, zero fluoroscopy for the transcatheter closure ASD. Zero fluoroscopy.
What's the zero?
Zero. Oh.
No.
Zero.
Not
No.
using any kind of probe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So at that time, they just looking on the TTE.
TEE.
TTE.
TTE. TEE.
TEE.
Yes.
Just
please.
looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
These two questions. TEE, if not available, what you suggest to do TTE, just only TTE? And the second question is, how about the zero fluoroscopy transcatheter closure?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that the without the TEE, you can perform just only looking at the fluoroscopy and TTE, just only. But I do understand that you can do it, but still, you know, the TTE, the most important thing, it does not cost. You can use it repeatedly. So looking at the TEE, I would say, I believe it's a good way to reduce, to get protein inside to the LL roof of some cell, because the TTE maybe is difficult to prescribe what the conditions on the upper side of the devices. Lower side of the devices is not so difficult, because even if the devices is a little bit larger, it would not get worse against the lower part of the heart. But still, if the upper side of the devices, maybe it may protrude inside the LLU, maybe the aortic valve. In some cases, not all the cases, in some cases, looking only for the TEE, maybe it's difficult for us to determine whether it's okay to release it or not. So that's the limitations of looking only for the TEE. If the device is located lower part, you can do it only by the TTE. But if it's located upper side, I think, if possible, I believe TTE is superior.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I believe.
Yeah.
And the second question is that without using the fluoroscopy, in very typical cases, the size selections and deploying the devices is not difficult. I just agree with that point. But well, during the interventions, if only looking for fluoroscopy, I believe it doesn't take so much time, because just only the couple few seconds, you will be able to finish the whole thing. So, of course, 0 is the most best. But how do you believe if the fluoroscopy time is just only 1 or 2 minutes, it does make a big difference? I don't think so, because I think it may be the same. Well, 0 is the best. The body size is maybe large. I think in that case, 0 will be the best. But if this body size is small, the how to say, the angulations and the free space of the part is limited. At that some time, the fluoroscopy should work very nicely. So I think it's safer to use it. If the body size is around maybe under 15, maybe I believe fluoroscopy should be used. Yeah. But I think that depends on each doctor's philosophy.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Weda. We learned much about the transcatheter closure of ESD, and we discussed about the how to choose the device, and then how to minimize complication like migration or the block of the pulmonary vein obstruction. And then we discussed about how the contribution of the TEE and TTE. I think if the small kid or small children, we must do TEE, and I think need fluoroscopy maybe. Yeah.
My question is about 0.
Yes.
0. In that kind of techniques is getting well done in these institutions. So,
National Cardiac Center Harapan kita do more zero fluoroscopy transcatheter closure of ESD. Dr. Radityo Prakoso and friends, I think more than 200, no, 100. I think maybe another center in our neighbor, Dr. Radityo Prakoso. I think they do more bigger.
Oh, yeah, bigger.
Woman. I think woman with pregnant son cannot delivery with cannot proceed
okay.
with the
I understand.
fluoroscopy.
I understand.
So maybe
Okay.
I think if you say the angulation of the heart and for the small kid, I think it's similar with our
Okay.
children. Yeah.
I think that's a good point, because if I were able, if I have to treat such a pregnant woman, I would use the ice intracardiac echo.
Oh,
With the
intracardiac.
intracardiac echo, the device selections and the device deployment is not difficult. The ICE was very nice.
Oh, mitra
But the
kerja.
most important thing, ICE is a little bit, what's the cost? It's
Cost,
a little bit
cost.
expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot reuse it.
Echocardiogram.
ICE will work very nicely.
Hmm.
You know, it makes the procedure very easy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Weda. I think we next session. Okay. Thank you for the second session. Okay. Next session is about the PDS stamping. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, break. Break first.
So, depends on
Okay.
which of them.
No, it's
It's
up to you.
okay. It's up to you.
Oh, no, it's
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. And now we can we listen Prof. Hideaki Ueda to present the PDS dancing perform PDS dancing for hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Yeah.
Okay, this is my last topics about the perform PDS thinking for HLHS. This is the pictures of the Yokohama cities, which is located
Wow.
by hospital, but it's,
Okay.
to be honest, from our hospital, we could not see any like pictures. So you have to take a ride, maybe
Drone.
30 minutes or 40 minutes ride from our places, but still, it looks like a new futures. But it's very well designed, so I would like to ask if you have a great chance, please visit to our cities, something like
Okay.
this.
Thank you.
The next pictures. Here, this is the picture of 2008 to
5 years.
2018. Ilfan, Bunda, Nico, Wang. And this is the joint session. And this Ilfan, Wang, Nico. This is the point of the populations, and here you can see it's located near to the Tokyo and near to the Yokohama around here. And our prefectures, Kanagawa prefectures, which has 8 million peoples, contain 51 prefectures, and the most majority lives inside Yokohama. And our institution is located just in the middle of it. This is the pictures of our institutions here. And we have totally 430 beds, 10 ICU beds, 43 IK units, 21 beds for NICU, and post-NICU has 23. We have a very beautiful chair blossoms at the beginning of April, so I would like to advise you to visit at just the beginning of April, if possible. So today I want to have a topics about what is the anatomy and what is the hemodynamics of the HLHS, and then what is the clinical outcome of the hypoplastic left heart syndrome and the variants in our children hospitals, and what is the stent implantations, and what is the complications of PD stent. First of all, I will talk about the anatomy and the hemodynamics of HLHS. Well, the left-sided pictures, this is the normal healthy person. As you can see, there we have a RA, right atrium here, right ventricle here, and then it will then go enter to the main PA here, and then those once the blood will enter to the pulmonary system, it will return to the LA here, and then we return to LV, and then go inside to the outer. Compared to the left normal healthy persons, the HLHS has only very small limited space of LV and very small outer valve, which is not available to maintain the system circulation. So always, if the HLHS had to be keep widely open of the PDA to keep the pathway against main PA to the descending aorta and ascending aorta here. And also, there should be an ASD widely open because this is the only exit of the pulmonary vein. If the ASD gets restricted, there's no pathway to go out from the LA. So again, I would like to say that the PDA should be kept widely open and the AC should be kept widely open. If the PFO get restricted, the exit of the pulmonary vein will be could not get smoothly inside the right inside the heart. So the pulmonary congestion will happen, and deep cyanosis will occur, leading to very critical situations. If the PDA gets restricted, the blood pressure will soon drop, and the systemic circulation should be very difficult to be maintained. So, what is the first palliation for the HLHS? So, there are some kind of the strategies, very variously, depends on each institution's philosophies, maybe philosophies of the surgeons. So this is a typically which we do for the first PA banding about the right PA and left PA. We call them bilateral PA banding. And then we implant the PDA around here and then let them widely open ASD. Maybe the balloon septal stomach will be performed at the same time. The pictures of the stent, something covering the whole PDA, and then this is the balloons against the dilate the restrictive ASD. Here, this is the pictures of the hybrid procedures, bilateral PA banding performed, and then the PDA stenting will be placed above the PDA. So after that, we should perform the normal procedures. There are two types of which we call them normal procedures. Typically, the left is a classical node, just only to be the pulmonary artery flow is maintained by the BT shots. But in our countries, the classical nose outcomes was very poor. So we were now performing we call them modified node by establishing the pulmonary artery flow by making the RV to PA conduit, something like this. If there is an excessive flow against the pulmonary arteries, we can make clips to reduce the pulmonary flow. So almost majority of these cases will be chest widely open, return to the ICU. If we found that there is a excessive pulmonary flow, maybe during the stay in the ICU, we could place these clips to reduce the BD shunt into the clips of the conduit. And then if the cyanosis would happen, we just balloon to pop up these clips. So this is the pictures of the primary node operation. As you can see, the delta outer here, which means that main P is divided among here, and then of the lower part of the outer here, and then it was connected to the descendant. So there are three parts of the vessel here, which means that there should be very high possibility to get restricted around this area. So that depends on each surgeon's techniques, surgeon's experience. It's the most difficult point of this surgery. Here, if the patient had controlled, the patient will move on to the Glenn operations, which call them bilateral bicameral femoral shunts, BCPS, and then move on to the final stage, TCPC, total cable femoral connections. We call them, most of them are treated with the extracardiac conduit. So we would like to talk about what is the clinical outcome of the hypoplastic lymphoma syndrome and its variants in our institutions. Before the 2007, the Sutter ratio of the HLHs was just around 0.5. That means half of them will get lost. But after 2007, we changed the philosophies, we changed the strategies, and then the outcome had improved a little bit, 7.3% at 8 years. So precisely, we had three strategies. First of all, we tried to do only by the node, but the outcome was only 0.5 Sutter ratio, which was not acceptable. So after that, we plan to do for the bilateral PA banding, and then do for the node shunt at the same time, and then go for the Glenn and then TCPC. But what we found, the outcome did not improve, which was not acceptable. So we decided to move much more to improve these numbers. The most highest number, as you can see, 0.8, is introduced by the bilateral PA banding first, and then about 3 months later, we will perform the node Glenn. So using this kind of philosophies, the coverage ratio has improved, showed acceptable results. So when we found if the ascending aorta narrower than below the 2 millimeters, which means that this is the most highest risk for the node, we never recommend for the patient for the node. We just move on to the bilateral PA banding first, and then 3 months later, we move on to long Glenn shunts, and then go for the pontics. So this is the outcome totally, which we call them. 38 cases at HLHs, and then using the bilateral PA banding, there is no dead cases, as you can see. So once the patient will reach to the TCPC, they will have a very good outcome, because for the 5 years follow-up, they almost will get survived. So the most important thing that which I would like to explain to the Dr. Winder, that the most majority of the HLHs is diagnosis during the fetal. So we can explain to the risk of the surgery to the parents very repeatedly that which part of the surgery is more difficult and what we should do and how we will try to, we explained about the three kind of the strategies. Lower the priority P banding, relations, and context. And this is the most important, I think, numbers for us. We see those kind of the prenatal diagnosis, the outcome of HLHS have improved very well because the HLHS could be get very fast to be high flow heart failure because of excessive pulmonary flow. So the patient should be diagnosed during the PDA. So what is the stent implantation for the PDA? I would like to show the contrast echoes, contrast, which will be out from the short Cs located into the main PA. You can see the very small altitude arch here. You can see this is the left PA here. You can see this is the right PA here. Looking at the lateral view, you can see the PDA is just one keep widening open. So at this area, we should cover the whole PDA by the stent. By the measurement, the maximum of the diameter was 7.2 millimeters. So we have to implant much more wider of the stent, which has a diameter of maybe 8 or 9 or something like that. So I choose the 8 millimeters devices, and the lens has fully covered, should be covering on the whole PDA. So I selected 18. You can see here, it covers from here to here. And then just dilate the stent very gently because during the inflations, the stent could be loose distally or proximally. So we should be very careful. And I do not balloon dilatations repeatedly, only once. This is the final pictures. You can see that the PDA stent has covered the whole PDA. No apparent stenosis inside the stent. The patient has moved on to the node gland shunt at the age of 8 months. So the stenosis didn't happen. So the next case is I would like to prescribe is the patient who had a continuous infusions and lipid prostaglandin waiting for node gland operations and in 3 months. But the congestive heart failure appeared because of the stenosis of the PDA that had happened. So we just move on to the stent implantation. So at the day of this 15, the PDA stenting was performed in the hybrid fashions with the simultaneously we have done for bilateral PA banding tightening. You can see the PDAs looks like total C, but among the echo, we found the stenosis site will appear something like this. But still, as you can see, the PDAs is one winding. We should covering the whole PDA. So because this is a narrow place was 5, but the length was 24. So I choose the 7 millimeter devices, but the length of 27. Here you can see inflate the stent very carefully. And then the final picture here, you can see there's no appearance stenosis inside. The other cases I would like to explain. This is not the typical HLTS. It does not look like the HLTS volumes because the patient had a critical illness. The LV functions was decreased so much that it looked like EFB. The PDA, it's dependent on the PDA. So we planned that we could not expect for the LV functions. So we decided to go for the fontan separations. So after day 6, the PDA stenosis and the congestive heart failure appeared. So we performed by the hybrid questions. This is the echo view here. You can see, oops. Sorry, doesn't move. Right. I'm sorry, doesn't move. But the LV wall does not move so much. So the LV wall is very poor. The PDA shows this is the most stenosis side, appeared to 6.1 millimeters. And then we choose the 6 millimeter that stands for length of 7 inch covered the whole PDA. You can see here. This is the final view. There is no clearance stenosis from the PDA stent. So, what is the complication of the PDA stent? Because not always it will work very well. Maybe you can maybe have a chance to experience the caponate. Maybe the stent migrate will happen. In such cases, it should be very difficult to recover such kind of complications. So it is a very high risk. You may have to explain that. Well, the true numbers of the complications is not completely figured out. I believe the complications should be around maybe 5 to 10% for each cases. So these cases had a HLHS, large ST, a cleft leaf plate, and then PD performed to choose the PD stent. Here we had cut down the 6 French sheets and advanced to the PA banding, but suddenly, sorry. But suddenly, the blood pressure dropped to 30, systolic 30, diastolic 10 millimeter mercuries. And you can see very carefully, there's a slit among the splits. Here, there is a negative flow among here, something like flat. And I didn't recognize about those during the procedures. So I measured the PDA, which showed the 8.2 millimeters, line 17. And then I had to advance the guide wire to let them place the stents, but those procedures was very difficult and had a difficulty to let them place the stent to let them gradually among the descending aorta. I had a very difficulty, but luckily I was able to implant. I was lucky to place the guide wire here, and then dilated the stent. Terminal length 9 millimeters, length of 19 millimeters of implant. And what we found soon after the stent implantation, the blood pressure recovered and get very stable. At that time, we checked the angiogram here very carefully and found that there is a flap over here. There is a flap over here. So the stent had keep widely obtained a good internal space. So the stenosis had disappeared once the stent had implanted. So luckily, which was not intendedly treated, the dissections of the PDA wall was treated by the stent implantation. But I think that was just only lucky, by chance. And then the patient had moved on to the non-gland ablations and finished TCPs at the age of 1 year and 9 months old. So I was very lucky. Another case is we had a HLHS intact atrial septum, and then we perform the angiogram here. And then we wanted to choose the express lane 7 millimeters, 17 millimeters markers. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the for the inter-atrial septums, and I wanted to place this stent inside to the atrial wall. So this is a completely different purpose. So I wanted to place among the inter-atrial septum. So I perforated by the needles and then let them insert the launches among here. And then wire here and place the stent among here. And then dilate the stent here. After the stent, you can see the stent was widely open among the atrial septums. So the inter-atrial septum could be treated by the stent implantation very nicely. So what we can learn from these cases, we should not never cut the short sheath, because once you cut the short sheath, the edges may hurt the PDA wall, really cause the tamponade. So please do not cut the short sheath. And whenever you insert the short sheath, it should be it should be better to insert the guide wire first, along the descending aorta, then advance the short sheath till the end of the PDAs. The stent's diameter should be larger, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters larger than maximum diameter of PDAs, because if you choose the same size, the stent migration will happen soon after, very easy, and it should be very difficult to retrieve it. So once the stent migration happens, you have to implant the stent amongst something else. Maybe you have to place the second stent to cover the whole PDAs. Please choose the stent long enough to cover the whole PDA. And then once you choose the stent, please dilate the stent very gently. This is my end of the stories. So there are many kinds of the difficult points because not all of the cases were happy after the result of the stent implantation. Maybe in some cases the stenosis of the edges of the stent may happen. But still, fortunately, we were able to dilate those kind of stenosis. Maybe we could able to get rid of the stenotic stent by surgery. So not all of the cases would be treated would be affected by the stent implantation, but still using those stent implantation, the most important thing is to avoid surgery of the node operation, which is the most highest risk for the open heart surgery for the neonates. So I believe the stent implantation is a very good option if you have a wide range of the stent variations. You should be able to choose the correct size of the stent, diameters, and lengths to covering the whole PDAs. So, well, I believe if you do for maybe much more than maybe 3 or 4 cases, you should be free. You should be free to implant the stent properly against the PDAs. So I believe in some way we could able to perform this PDA stent in the Windows conduction. So I would like to say again that we should think for the possibility to go further for the stent implantation for the HLHS. Thank you for attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof. Ueda. We learn about PDA stenting in especially for left heart syndrome. I think for the audience, PDA stenting can do in critical CSD like PAPS, pulmonary atresia, intact ventricular septum. But Prof. Ueda, this presentation underline the hypoplastic left heart syndrome because of this is the most challenging, I think, in Asia, because hypoplastic left heart syndrome in many countries, we like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, I think still we didn't proceed because of high cost. I think Japan more advanced for hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and we learn more about the interventional neonate, I think, and I think I will ask about the how to proceed the PDA stenting and bilateral PA bending. It is this hybrid procedure, and how long we do, I think, like open balloon atrial septostomy, and then PDA stenting and bilateral PA bending, or bilateral PA bending first with the prostaglandin, and then we proceed balloon atrial septostomy. So I think we want to learn detail about how to manage after a patient delivered. Okay, because we have so many patients with hypoplastic left heart syndrome detected prenatally with Dr. Winda and Dr. Sharif Rohimi.
I think you had pointed out very important things, because the timing of the treatment is very difficult. Because once it depends on the stenosis of the restricted foraminal valley, once you perform the balloon septostomy, suddenly the high flow of the pulmonary arteries would happen, which means that if the patient will suffer from the congestive heart failure. So at that time, you should perform the PA banding. So if you perform the VASC or balloon artery septostomy, you should always think about the bilateral PA banding. I would like to talk about the management of the congenital heart disease tomorrow.
Oh yes, yes.
Two days.
Two days.
Day after.
Day after tomorrow.
The day after
Because
tomorrow.
tomorrow is cath lab.
Once the saturation had arose above the 85 to 90%, you should, I think, proceed for the bilateral PA bandings. And if possible, if you place the prostaglandins for about 20 weeks, 2 weeks, or maybe wait for 1 month, the stent implantation will be done separately at the age of the 1 month old, because during the procedures within the 1 month, once you place the stent during the procedures, what happens is the blood pressure will get very unstable. The blood pressure will get dropped very easily, because the guide wire will be placed among the alveoli, and the alveoli outflow tract, and then inserted against the pulmonary arteries, which means that the normal heart contractions will be blocked because of the guide wire. The guide wire will expand it, so the contraction will be damaged, or it may get decreased. So the cardiac outcome will be not maintained because of the stiff guide wires. So it's possible during the stent implantation, during the hybrid procedures, it should be very easy to control the blood pressures. So that's why we like to perform during the same times, and during do the bilateral banding first, and then move on to the stent implantations. We do just only for the left PA banding first, and then move on to the stent implantation, and then we ask for the surgeon to do it for the light PA banding, something like that. So, so that's kind of the operation of the option will be due to each surgeon's experience and philosophies. There are some kind of variations, but still, the stent implantation should be done at the same time as doing performing the PA banding, because the procedures should be straightforward, will be well controlled, will be easy to control the blood pressures. So I believe the hybrid procedure should be the best. But well, maybe in some cases we could perform the stent implantation in another days, but still during those procedures, the blood pressure will be dropped very easily. So we have to be careful among those procedures.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. And then maybe Dr. Linda have a question.
For achievement in hypoplastic heart syndrome. But I think at previous Zoom meeting with our hospital, Dr. has already explained about the hypoplastic syndrome, and
I know that we are having difficulty in managing this particular diagnosis, because we already performed fetal echocardiography, and we think that in our hospital we should move forward to perform the management strategies under your supervision, our collaboration with Kanagawa. We almost have in the last 3 years, when we have increasing referral for fetal echo from Indonesia. I think that we have from Sumatra, from other island. They refer to us especially for the worst diagnosis such as hypoplastic left syndrome. So I just want to say that I think this is the time for us to make a project something like that, Dr. Ayah, because we still didn't do the hybrid procedure, even though we already talked about it before the baby born, but we still maybe need more robust plan for this hypoplastic management. I knew that financial problem is the issue, but my opinion, because this is the national referral center, so we maybe we cannot let the financial issue be our obstacle. Not that kind of thing that what we have to do in the center like National Women and Children Hospital. Thank you.
Well, I think you have pointed out very good because it may requires of cost, but still I believe when I started my career just about 30 years ago, we couldn't able to get survive the baby. We just sent to the surgeries, and the old patient had died during soon after the surgery. So it takes about for us in our institutions about I think it will take about 10 years or so. The doctor asses had arrived to our institutions, and then the situation had improved dramatically. So what I have learned from him, of course, the techniques of the surgeries is the most important things, but the next thing is important of the post-surgery care management is also requested at the most higher levels, and it is very how to say difficult to balance of the pulmonary arteries and the balance of the pulmonary circulations. So I would like to talk about those how to manage to control the congenital heart failure the day after tomorrow. But those kind of procedures should be controlled among the blood pressure among the 40, maybe near to 35, maybe 40 millimeter mercuries. That means low pressures compared to the other open heart surgeries. And so among those, maybe 1 day, 2 days after the operation, it should be keep very high tension attentions against the post-operative status. We should use many kinds of medication to let them maintain the appropriate urine output, or maybe we could we have to reduce the pulmonary artery flow because the alveoli would not see the appropriate, the outcome. So we have to reduce to decrease the volume against the impaired alveoli contraction. So there are many kinds of things that we should be careful against to control the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary flow, and the systemic flow. So I think of course the most important things is the requires the surgical techniques, but also post-operation management is also important. We cannot do without those kind of things. So maybe 2 or 3 days, this is the most highest attention is required to get control.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Weda. We must underline the post-op care is most important thing after surgery or hybrid procedure in hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I think is for all the surgery, cost of care is most important thing. But in advanced like hypoplastic left heart syndrome, I think 3 or 4 days, so difficult to balance pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. I think we learn so much, and maybe the last not question but suggestion. We have a prenatal diagnosis, so many hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and we have maybe advanced surgery in our neighbor National Cardiac Center. We have Dr. Budi Rahmat, maybe accompany our surgeon, Dr. Hadi, in our hospital, join last maybe 1 month. I think maybe next how you suggest us, because we have this kind of the opportunity, I think, because we have a neonatologist, we have a prenatal diagnosis, we have a OBGYN, and we have a surgeon, because we cannot let them die before before surgery. I think or something, maybe what we do first, because of maybe this is maybe Dr. Winda said, I cannot see the I think the tear of the mothers, so just let them go. Okay.
I think it's a very good question, because, well, I found out for the we do not perform the operation, right?
Yes.
We just only do perform the correct echo to let them understand how the surgeon should treat, and also only we can do is to manage to control the pulmonary artery circulations and the system circulations. But the most important thing I think is that those majority of the patients will suffer from the congestive heart failure, because as you know, there is no way to maintain, if the pulmonary artery pressures or the pulmonary artery resistance will drop, soon after birth. If once the lungs will getting dry, the resistance of the pulmonary artery will drop dramatically, which means that the systemic circulation will be diminished soon after the drop of the resistance of the pulmonary arteries. So in such situation, the most efficient way to control the pulmonary circulation is to induce the nitrogen gas to perform the how do you say, the lower concentrations of oxygen. In this air, we will have a 21% of oxygen. But controlling the LHS, in some cases, we would just use 13% oxygen in the next air, with the air plus nitrogen, which I would like to talk about the topics the day after tomorrow. Using those kind of the gas, it's very easy. It's not so difficult to keep lower concentrations of the oxygens using these 13 or maybe 14% oxygens. And the most important thing is that nitrogen gas is, as you know, it's used to keep controlling inside the tire. It's widely used in the outside of the hospitals. So the nitrogen gas is not expensive compared to the NO. not you have you can use this for the nitrogen gas for design for the industry purpose. So at the beginning, or even for us, we just buy the many oxygens, something like a big amount of how to say box tank
Tank.
many tanks, gas tanks, gas tanks of the oxygens, and then we have maybe 10 or 20 tanks. Yeah. So well, so but the nitrogen gas will help those such kind of situation, but still we just tell them surgeon when we should perform the peer banding. So at the morning we will have a discussions. We will have a short meeting, and then the evening we have the same discussions again. So we just decide twice in a day, always at the morning, at evening. And then at the morning, if the baby is okay, and then when we found in the evening, the baby is suffering from positive health data, then we move on soon after the conference. Maybe if the baby can wait, we'll just perform the peer banding in the next morning.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ueda. Today we have so full of the PDA culture, our fusion and PDA stamping. And thank you for your presentation, nice presentation, and maybe we can improve our knowledge and then maybe skill. Soon after that, our cat lab waiting for us. So maybe thank you for your presentation, and maybe one more for the presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, I think it's enough. I'm moderator today, and I have sorry for the mistake, and thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening.
Okay. We already reached the end of session. Thank you for Dr. Prof. Hidayatullah. Thank you for Dr. Linda and Dr. Supromita. Thank you for all participants who already attended the guest lecture until this evening. Since the cardiac catheterization and surgical is new in RSAB Harapan Kita, we really feel grateful you can come to RSAB Harapan Kita, dan besok kita akan tim Katlab besok akan tindakan di ruang kateterisasi. Selanjutnya untuk kegiatan guest lecture akan diadakan lusa ya dok ya, the day after tomorrow, dimulai pukul jam 8.30. Terima kasih untuk semua partisipan. Saya tutup kegiatan meeting kali ini. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
With netizen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Arigatou gozaimasu.